Oh, hey, I've been muted that entire time, so you probably haven't been able to hear me. So welcome to Comic Book News. I'm your old pal, Dan Shaheen. Thanks for coming. Sorry about that. I got a new setup here in the studio. We got a lot more room to run around. We got the new $1 Million Comics cam. We got all kinds of stuff. But tonight is just a good old-fashioned interview. I'm talking with an early indie publishing pioneer, really, no other word for it. Bill Schanes. We're going to talk to him about his early days in publishing and distribution and his years working at Diamond. But we're also going to talk about Givie Comics Hope, his new initiative that's bringing some help to the really hard hit and struggling retail comics industry. So I see your comments. There's people watching, not too many. I know I'm on mute, but I was on mute, but I've taken it off. If you've got questions, hold to the end, and we will have a Q&A session like we always do at the end. If you've got comments and they look interesting, you never know. They might throw up in the middle, but I'm not going to stop the conversation, even if you do like a super chat or whatever. I'm sorry, guys. That's just not how it works here. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest because we got a lot to talk about. I want to welcome Bill Schanes. Bill, welcome to Comic Book News.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate that very much.
No problem. Sorry about the technical snafu, but what are you going to do?
I thought it was a special effect on your side, some kind of genie magic.
Oh my gosh, who am I going to blame? The sound guy. There's always something there's always something going on wrong in this place. We'll blame the engineers. So man, the problems we've got here are very small compared to the problems going on in the whole world, right? We've got pandemics that is affecting the entire economy. But, here comic books is our slice of life. So tell us a little bit, Bill. What is Givie Comics Hope? What does that mean?
Sure. Well, first of all, Dan, just to go back a couple of little minutes here, I've been retired for the most part for the last 7 years. And I was doing an extended trip overseas. And I was in Europe, actually in central Italy, when COVID just started hitting worldwide. And I was working my way back to the US just to figure it'd be a safer place to be. And I realized that this thing could be pretty big before it's even called, a worldwide pandemic. And I was trying to think about if these big, huge businesses in the world are getting affected by this, then the mom and pops in every industry are really going to be challenged. So I try to put together ideas of, I'm not a rocket scientist. I can't create a vaccine. I can't solve world hunger. But what I do have, using old world terms, I do have an old, big, clunky Rolodex that's got thousands and thousands of contacts over the decades. And that's something I felt I could activate and do something that would be positive for the people I really care about, which is the comic book specialty retailers, the comic shops. So I put together an idea of helping them out through donations from fans and publishers and retailers and creators. And the basic concept is I really feel that these mom and pop shops, the comic shops, who are already having a difficult time overall with COVID, if this extends on for a few months or a good chunk of next year, the future could be very grim for some of them. And that would make me very, very sad because these are my friends, my buddies. So what I came up with an idea is to activate each part of the comic industry, consumers, retailers, publishers, creators, printers, media partners, licensing agents, all the people involved, and get them proactively talking about comic shops. And instead of asking for cash donations, which cash is tight right now, I decided to approach it a little differently and say, well, why don't you donate something out of your collections? Because we all own a lot of stuff. Some of our stuff's pretty good stuff. A lot of our stuff is just tonnage, but we own a lot of stuff. So we came up with the idea of a Drive for Five, and I recruited a bunch of my friends in the industry, publishers, retailer partners, marketing experts. And we kind of have an informal ad hoc group, which we're dubbing the Give Comics Hope org group. And there's about 20 of us behind the scenes. I'm the so-called face of it, which isn't a very pretty face, but I'm the face of it. And we just launched about a week ago the formal campaign, although it's been months in the planning. And as you're showing on screen right now, we've done a lot of industry professional PSA or plea videos, having them using their own words about why they think comic shops are important, why consumers, retailers, creators should donate part of their collections to the cause. And I think we can do some pretty good things here. We've partnered with BINK, B-I-N-K, who's the Book Industry Charitable Council, and they've set up a special comic book division, which is where the Jim Lee program went through, the Gail Simone program went through, and a few others.
Oh, and yeah, we're big supporters here at Comic Book News. Sure.
Right. And so we partnered with them, and they're our official charity partner. We partnered with Heritage Auctions, the big auction house in Dallas, and they're going to be handling our higher end donations. And they've generously waived all their seller fees, so it's going to bring even more money into the funding operation. And then we've also partnered with Jesse James out in Arizona, who's one of the biggest eBay sellers, and he's going to handle our eBay sales for the not quite expensive items.
Jesse James is a heck of a guy. I know him. The Comic Book Shopping Network. They've been a guest on this show.
Right.
Jesse's been on the show twice.
Right.
I don't know a harder worker in comics, man. That guy hustles like nobody I've ever seen. It's amazing.
He's kind of a new wave kind of guy, and he's really setting a new standard for energy, creativeness. He's throwing a lot of things at the works at once.
And pure positivity. That's what I love the most about that guy.
Philip Sablik suggested I talk to him about maybe doing the eBay part for us. Philip's a publisher over at Boom, on one of our volunteers. And my first call with Jesse was amazing. He was bubbly. I asked him some huge favors that's going to cost him some serious money. And he's like, bring it on. I'm ready for this. We need this. You don't have to ask me a second. Even before I could finish my pitch, he's like, Bill, I'm in. You don't have to worry about it. I'm 100% sold. So really super guy.
He's a true believer, 100% comims. Right, and BINK, just so people know, I think it's BINC, right? Book Industry Charitable, something like that. Yeah.
I should know that, shouldn't I?
It is I think it's BINC. I know. I got a receipt here because we matched all of our donations from our Steve Jeppy live stream, and we raised $500 or $600 that we donated to BINK.
Nice.
All to help, small bookstores and comic book stores specifically. How do they help, Bill? What do they do for real?
Right. So in general, BINK was set up for the independent bookstores. That was their mission goal from the publishing side, and they help out originally with the stores that end up in financial trouble, or employees who maybe don't have insurance or personal financial challenges, and they help out with grants or gifts through nonprofit. In our case, they've got the separate comic arm, where as we raise money through Heritage and through Jesse James and through our merchandise program on Threadless, those funds, 100% of those funds will go to BINK's comic arm, and then BINK will do a series of call outs, which will help them promote to comic stores in the United States and Canada and the UK, for them to fill out a simple 2-page application for a financial grant based on hardship. And so this is the first time I think that both the UK and the EU and Canada will be included in a really big fundraising program. So those retailers have always been very supportive in the past in those countries, in those regions, but they really haven't gotten the financial support back from the programs that they're supporting.
Right.
So this is kind of a nice little twist that we were to add in 2 new sectors that previously haven't been ignored, just haven't been able to participate in a meaningful way. And we'll do the Canada part through Comic Legends, which is kind of a spin-off of the Comic Legal Defense Fund, separate company completely, separate charity completely. And the UK one, we've got 2 partners we're discussing with right now. One's already agreed to do it. We're just seeing who's got the most capacity. We're not ready to announce that name yet, but there'll be a UK partner to handle the 4 countries over there for the comic shops there, which would be pretty cool.
That's great. You know, it's tough. It's tough times right now.
Right.
It's not getting any easier for small businesses going forward into the future. But wait, let's dial it back. We're going to go back to the past now, Bill. I hope everybody goes to givecomicshope.org. I'll make sure to put a link in the description down below. Great. You can see how you can participate, how you can donate, how you can purchase stuff to support the cause.
Great, appreciate that.
So let's go back, Bill. Let's go back to the 70s, man. Things were groovy.
Man, it was kind of groovy. It was kind of hip.
Right?
It was psychedelic, man.
So tell me how you got into the business of comics. You know, well, maybe first even back it up. Tell us how you got into comics in general, and then just go from there. Tell us the secret origin of Bill Schanes.
Well, it happened on the exact same day. Both answers, both questions. I was 13 and my brother was 17, and we were riding our bicycles around, and we wanted to ride our bicycles to a local swap meet in San Diego, a couple miles from our house in Pacific Beach. When we got to the swap meet, you know, they have the cars were laid out in rows, and they threw their junk on the ground, the asphalt ground, and you know, you walk up and down the aisle looking for weird stuff, just little things that might be fun to buy. For, you know, in 1971 was the year we did this. You know, everything was, you know, 25 cents, 50 cents. Even little kids could have a couple bucks in their pocket. So we're walking up down these aisles, and this lady had an old panel van, and she had just sprawled on the front of the van just boxes and boxes of comics. In those days, there weren't the long white coffin boxes. There weren't a lot of plastic bags. Just comics flipped every which way. Some were upside down, some were backwards, but they're laying on the floor, and there was even more boxes inside the van. And my history is I've got a really bad dyslexia, so I have a real reading challenge. My eye-brain coordination is not what it should be, and so I was having a really difficult time in school, basically a straight D or D- student, barely graduating every year to the next grade. And so when I saw these comics, I'd never seen a comic book before, never even knew what it was. I just sat down and started reading them. The stories were really interesting because there was pictures to help me digest the words. So I was reading the word balloons. I'm like, I'm not sure what that means. And there was a picture describing kind of the scenario. I'm like, okay, it's kind of clicking in my mind. So my brother and I talked to the lady, and she had about 900 to 1,000 comics. They were all from the 50s and 60s. And she said, well, she wanted basically about 12 cents each, which is almost cover price back then.
Right. Mostly
10-cent books. And we said, well, what happens if we bought all of them, like the whole lot? He said, well, I'll take $50 for the 900 plus comics. Well, we didn't have any money. We had a couple bucks. So we asked her to hold the comics, don't sell any, for about an hour. That would give us time to bicycle home, ask our parents for the money. I could demonstrate to my mother, especially, who's a school teacher at the time, that I was enjoying reading something. I knew that would excite her because I wasn't enjoying reading anything. And so she agreed to loan us $50, and school teachers, that's a lot of money, 1971. Right. She drove us down in the family station wagon with the two bench seats in the back, and we picked the comics up and brought them home. And when we got home, we started to unload the comics, and our next door neighbor came over and said, "Hey, can I buy the copy of Fantastic Four #2?" I said, I don't understand what that means. You know, that book right there, Fantastic Four #2s. They have names. I mean, I didn't know anything. He goes, every book's got a name and its issue number. I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so So
that's a pretty early concept. I mean, like, so to you, it was just really the visual appeal of the pictures that was drawing you in.
right, there was no idea there was artists inside. It didn't come to me as a concept. It's just good stories with the word balloons, and the pictures helped me to understand what I was reading.
Yeah.
So he said, well, I like that. I'll give you $38 for the FF #2 out of the blue. So I'm like, so I literally, my brother and I, like, we paid $50 for 1,000 books, let's say. So 5 cents a piece. Now we have $9.99 left over for $12. I think we can make this work. So we said to the guy, one of our friends, we didn't know he collected comics. We said, well, you can buy it, but we have to go read it first. Then you can have it. Because we had priorities, of course. And we lived in a place called Pacific Beach, which is a coastal community in San Diego. And we just bought this big comic collection, which is where we came up with the name Pacific Comics.
Ah, okay.
There was no big story.
Would you say that FF #2 was in?
We didn't understand condition. We didn't understand artists.
But knowing what you know now.
I don't have any clue. I have no remembrance of the books. I'm thinking, since you have 1,000 books from the 50s and 60s, it was a really good collection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say, like, was that the biggest gem that sticks out, or?
Well, we didn't look at it that way. We wanted to read them. So things got sold as people came by and visited, and this guy bought a book for $20. This guy bought for $5.
And so you're just relying on them, though, on their niceness.
We didn't know they were rare. We didn't know they were valuable.
But I mean, well, how did they just not slip you $5 or whatever? Like, nice.
Well,
that's
what
nice.
happened. What happened though is this guy that came over with the FF #2 was on the committee of the first Comic-Con in San Diego, and he said, "Well, there's a lot of collectors in town, and this collection is incredible. Do you mind if next weekend I invite some friends over and we'll go shopping at your house?" And we're like, "Oh, you mean they'll give us money for this stuff? This is great!" And like the next weekend, we had like 15 kids all roaming around the house, buying and trading, bringing. They brought their comics in. They were trading in the front yard, and they're on a kitchen table and we had a swimming pool in the backyard, and there were comics everywhere, buying and selling and trading. And over that course, that first year, we sold thousands and thousands of dollars off that initial collection.
Wow.
And we got given pretty early on. I think it was the first or second year the Overstreet Price Guide came out. We got given this book, this Bible that we didn't know anything about, and then we started looking up. Hey, I got that one. Look at that. Oh, it's worth $22. Oh, that's worth $1. Oh, how interesting. And they keep calling this guy Jack Kirby. He's in a lot of these important books because this is all not, it wasn't instinctive. So we're like, oh, look, that guy's name pops up all the time in the price guide. And then, Dick Swan or whoever the creators were at the time, like, well, right. those must be important people. And then we started looking in the indicia, and hey, there's Marvel Comics and DC Comics. And there's a few other ACGs and a few other publishers, but most of the comics are Marvel and DCs, which we also didn't know there was a Marvel and DC. So it really was a very happenstance situation. But because of our reading disorders, especially mine, it became very evident that I enjoyed reading those, and my parents were encouraging us to read them because I was still having a miserable time in school. And that little fleeting moment of swap meet turned to be almost a 50-year venture.
Well, I mean, not to mention
total craziness.
You paid your mom back her $50, and I hope she got a little juice on that. I hope she wet her beak a little bit on that one.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Ha!
Motherly love.
Okay, love. All right. So that explains how you got into the cutthroat world of distribution, Bill, and retailing, right? Or what was it first? So that you were a hobbyist turned collector, like almost collector before hobbyist, right? You were flipping books.
Right, happened all at once.
Before you read them.
And so what happened was we realized that there was so many kids coming over on weekends. After a few weekends, we were getting crowds at our house, like crowds, buying and selling and trading. And so we decided, there's probably more people around the town that would want to know about our stuff. So we put a little catalog together, a little, mimeograph catalog listing, probably 24 pages of type on a typewriter, the old brother's typewriter, just typing them out with typos and everything else, because we didn't have whiteout back then. Type was the word. And my brother drew our logo, which is a seagull, on the corner of our mail order catalog. And we just some little hand stretches inside just to break up the monotony of print. and we mailed them to all kinds of collectors. We met at the Comic-Con committees and at various other comic events around town, and people started buying comics from us. And what we didn't realize when you do a catalog, we were not very sophisticated as 13 and 17-year-olds, that you're supposed to have more than one copy in inventory before you list something. So we did this printed catalog, and we mailed them out to a few hundred friends and other people we didn't know, and we're getting all kinds of orders for the exact same book, which we get exactly one copy of. So the very first order came in, took the copy, and then also we had to get a checking account, so we had to write refund checks because we had no more copies left. Or people were sending us cash in the mail because back then, post office didn't frown on cash. So people would buy a $3 comic book and would send in 10 quarters, and half the envelopes would be ripped, and none of the quarters would be left. But the kid put them in there because you could see the shape of the quarter on the envelope.
Yes.
So they're trying to be honest, but the postman either ripped or the postman took the money. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it was
I'm flashing back to the ads from comics of that era too, and the prices in those things. When I look back and I look through them, you think about for what even back then, I mean, was not a ton of money. You could have some really wonderful comics.
Oh, absolutely. So we started this mail order business, and literally in about a year and a half, our house had grown from that 1,000 comics to about 80,000 comics by buying. We started vacuuming San Diego County for back issues everywhere.
Right.
Your poor
mother.
I was in high school, but every weekend I was being driven someplace or bicycling someplace to buy a collection every weekend.
What year would that be roughly?
72, 73.
Okay, so we're still early 70s. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you're quickly making that road into a dealer. You're picking, you're making buys, you're starting to understand what makes some books desirable and some books maybe unsellable. And
we figured that out. We figured that out pretty fast. Absolutely. We joined the committee of Comic-Con in the second year. So I've been to the 49 of the 50 physical conventions. I wasn't in the business on the very first one. And then it became kind of unruly. Our house was becoming like a parking problem. There was like bicycles all over the floor on the ground outside the house. And the older kids had cars. And so our neighbors were getting pissed off because there was too many cars in the street. And my parents were like, we can't get our house back anymore. Every weekend there's kids everywhere. So our parents kind of encouraged us to get a retail store, basically not to kick us out, but to get the comics out so they could reclaim their house.
It's either that or start charging for parking, right?
Right. So we found normally in retail, the old slogan is location, location, location.
Yes.
And we went for cheap, cheap, cheap.
Yes.
So there was a store about 1,000 square feet, about a mile and a half from our house, which I could bicycle ride to because I couldn't drive a car. Didn't have a license for another couple of years. And it was 1,000 feet for $200 rent, sandwiched between a really, let's say, old-fashioned bar that's where the drunks went to drink.
Yeah.
It wasn't where the couple went or the family went to have a beer. This is the old-fashioned bar that was run down way past its prime.
The non-ironic dive bar.
Man, you betcha. And then the other side, we had a poodle dog grooming store. So all day long, we hear the drunks breaking glasses and shouting out loud, or you hear yip 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 as the dog's getting groomed, and it's like the sound bite from both walls stereoing in. And that was our first store. And then within a couple of years, we opened up 3 more in San Diego County.
Wow.
We ended up in 4 stores. The stores were all growing, and we realized there was other stores in Southern California that wanted new comics, but they're having trouble finding them. And so we were buying them from a local distributor in San Diego called San Diego Periodical Distributors, and they were old school, let's say, to be delicate, Italian businesses.
Gotcha.
With all yes, I mean I'm part Italian, my mother's side, so I can speak the language, so to speak. And these guys handle all the newsstands in San Diego County. So magazines, Newsweek, Times, Sports Illustrated, the porno magazines, they handle everything. And
back when that was a really big business too.
Yes, and all the distributorships were almost always Italian in every city in the country, almost all Italians. It's kind of old. These are what they call,
back in those days, they called those the IDs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's independent distributors. Exactly right. Okay. Perfect.
All right.
So we made a deal with them to buy the comics at 20% off. Whoop whoop. but everyone else is getting 20% off too, but they're buying returnable. And because we were the guys who wanted to sort through them and get the best copies, we got ours non-returnable. So worst deal.
But same
20% off.
price, but non-returnable,
Yeah.
but first pick.
Yes. And then,
That's a sucker's deal, Bill. That's a sucker's
terrible.
deal.
It was terrible. And then within a year, we were buying most of the comics that were being sold to them.
Yeah.
So they were starting to short 7-Elevens because we were taking more comics out than they could put on the distribution lines. And we asked for a higher discount, and they balked, but they gave us 40% eventually. So they went from 20 to 25. I asked for 40, and I got a, let's say, a less than desirable response. And I finally had gotten a car around that time. And during my freshman year of high school, I had over 60 flat tires in one calendar year. And there was more than a subtle message being sent to me about stop asking for more deal points. Knock it off, kid. This could get serious.
Bicycle flat tires. Oh my God.
This wasn't an idle. This was a real threat.
Gotcha.
And so ironically, my mother and I went to the police station. I said, I think you guys are going to kill me. Like they're going to kill us. And it's this guy right here. We named all the officers of the company. So when you find us in the gutter, those are the guys that did it. Those guys right there.
Right.
And it stopped a couple weeks later. So I know they visited him and said, stop, you're being ridiculous. Now, what was really sad was, as a side so-called funny story is, I had so many flat tires, I knew all the guys at the tire place by their first names.
Okay.
It was the first year Honda had a car out, and that car was all fiberglass, and a new tire was $18 brand new, a new tire. So they were stocking more tires for me because I kept selling out of all the tire sizes I needed for one little car, because who needs 60 tires in 1 month?
I feel like it's a deal with the tire guy and the
exactly,
ID.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now you're a distributor, right? But wait a minute. I've got a little something. I got a little something from those days, maybe. Let's see. What have I got? This is a little later, but this is 1977.
So this is our mail order catalog.
Yeah.
We had started deciding that we wanted our catalog to be more than just product listings. We wanted to offer not just selling original artwork. We wanted to commission or ask artists to do artwork for our catalogs to help spice up the pages. So
you went with a no-name kind of like entry-level guy named Frank Frazetta?
Yeah, we did a couple years before that, and then we wanted to up our game. So I called up Frank's wife, Ellie, who had met in 1971 at a science fiction show in Phoenix. And she said, if you ever want to do business with us, she gave me a business card and it said Frank Frazetta, her name and phone number on it. I saved the card and said, well, I'm going to call you someday. As a 13-year-old, what do I know? And so I saved the card and I called her and said, we're doing this new catalog and we want to get a really nice image. And what do you got that we could use? And we talked about it. She mailed us some photographs of images they had. This was originally a National Lampoon cover that wasn't widely circulated.
Oh, okay.
And so we said,
it's familiar. Okay, maybe I have seen it on that before. Okay.
So she said it wasn't widely circulated. So, we'd like to use it. And so she wanted for us the incredible amount of money of $1,500 in 1977 for the one-time reproduction right.
Wow.
And we swallowed hard. In our catalog the year before, it sold about 5,000 copies. And we put this catalog out, and we had, I think, 7 printings of the catalog.
Oh.
And we sold almost 35,000 copies of the catalog.
Because people like the cover, you think?
Well, it came in a brown envelope to a kid's house where the parents thinking he's getting comic books.
Uh-huh.
So it's like almost a porno venture for little kids all around, little boys around the world.
Oh, I love that.
It was such a wacky thing. And ironically, when the catalog got printed, and an old friend of mine, David Scroggie, who used to work for Dark Horse and me a long time ago, reminded me when we sent the Frazettas their copies of the catalogs, like their comp copies. Ellie Frazetta, Frank's wife, called me back and said, this is the nicest printing we've ever had of any of our artwork. It's virgin non-white, like it's perfect white covers. I said, well, that's really a compliment coming from Frazettas. But this catalog put us on the map on a mail order basis, and we ended up being one of the biggest mail order dealers in North America based on this catalog.
Wow.
Inside there's probably 60 pages of original artwork that was commissioned for us, or drawn for us.
Just for the purposes of the catalog.
Well, this is a pretty nice piece of artwork, and for $1, it got delivered to your house.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And then of course, you got a catalog inside of stuff to buy too. And that catalog
In
was almost
black and white
100
interior.
pages.
I'm assuming black and white.
It was, but it was almost 100 pages long of listings. Just very comprehensive. And we were one of the first guys, not the first guy, but one of the first guys in the back issues area to list every artist on every issue. We realized that the artists are really important.
You got any copies of these things still?
A couple, not many.
Okay. So this is 77. Were you publishing your own books by this point, or when did?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, so so you distributed, right? You made your money as a middleman.
Right. So when the distributor kind of said no more deals, you've maxed out, he told us to go direct. He said, here, call up Marvel DC, buy from them.
Sure. Yeah,
We didn't know how to do that, but we just blind called and said, hey, we got some comic shops out here. Can we buy from you? And they said, well, no, but you can buy from this guy called Phil Suling we just opened up, who became very instrumental in the early days of distribution.
Sure.
And we said, we called Philip and made a deal to buy him at 50 off. So we went from 20 to 25 to 50.
Nice.
So it was a huge discount jump. Kind of a
bigger minimums, or that you had to, and I'm assuming you're buying like in bundles or
yes, exactly right, bulk copies.
Yeah.
And then all the stores around us started saying, well, Bill, since you're going to buy from Phil, we'll just buy from you. So all of a sudden we had 10 stores, 20 stores, 30 stores, all bulking the orders together. And I think we were Seagate's third or fourth account with that set up out of New York, and we became a big distributor on the West Coast. Eventually at an LA office and an office in Steelville, Illinois, which is only a few miles from Sparta, which is where the comics were printed. And the funny story about Steelville was it was the home of Seaguard, the Popeye artist.
Oh, yes.
That's who was born. We went looking for a warehouse. We're driving around Steelville, this little hobunk town. And out of nowhere, right in the middle of the square of the main town, on Main Street, there's a huge statue of Popeye. And we said, we're getting a warehouse in this city. This is where we get the warehouse in. This is a. That
was a sign.
It was an omen. We said, this is the message from high up. Thor looked down and said, this is where your warehouse has to be. So we bought a warehouse there, and ironically, it was a old fire station with the fire trucks, the two bay doors, with the working pole, and the fire alarm. So when the trucks pulled up to deliver comics to us, we would ring the alarm and slide down the pole. It was such a great gig.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, and so then late in the 70s, we realized that there were not that many comics being published. I'm having some technical difficulty on my side. My battery's going berserk on me right now, which is not good.
Okay.
That would be bad for us.
That would be.
So anyway, late 70s, we decided there wasn't many comics being published. It was DC, Marvel, Harvey, Archie, and Starlog, and that was about it. So we did an experimental book called One, O-N-E, which most people don't know that was actually Pacific Comics' first comic. Everyone says Captain Victory. And one was a photo mini comic with black and white interiors and a color cover. And sold moderately okay, but we didn't know how to publish. We had a test run. And then realized we could do there. And then we said, well, we can do this on a bigger level. So we, because of our association with Comic-Con and being on the committee, we had met many of the artists. And so we called up Jack Kirby and said, hey, we're going to publish color comics. Would you like to come back to comics? Because he had left comics for a while, went to Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, right.
Working in animation, which of course is a terrible shame of his talent. And he said, well, I said, when we're all about creator rights. So we drafted up a contract that was much more friendly to the creators than to us. He read it, and then Roz, his wife, called back and said, we don't understand the contract. We get to keep the artwork. We own the characters. You pay us royalties from copy number 1, and you think that's good for you. I said, I think it's great for us. You create the stuff. It's not. We don't create any juice here. We can market your work. We can market your work. We can help sell it. But you're the people that create the universes. You that create the characters.
Well, but Mike, there's something kind of missing here in this picture because, I mean, I guess you gained your publishing and printing skills just from the printing of the catalogs for Pacific. Because how did you get? Because Frazetta remarked on the high quality of that. So where did the printing acumen and the reproduction acumen? That doesn't just happen, especially back then. It was not easy to do that kind of stuff, was it?
Not really, and we had, because as distributors, we had visited some of the printers of comics to understand how they printed and came off the production lines, so we knew where to send our trucks. So we'd seen printing presses work. We saw how color separations were done manually back then by a place called Chemical Color, and we said, well, I think we can figure this out pretty fast, and we did. And so we got Jack to agree, and ironically, we had put sales forecasts in from the competing distributors, about 15 other distributors, and I'd done some financial analysis, and I said, well, I think we can sell 35, 40,000 of these. Our comics are $1 when everyone else's comics are 50 cents, so it's twice as expensive. Same page count, same printer, same paper, same everything, but twice as expensive. So we're like, well, man, this is going to be, consumers going to revolt against us, and also distributors are going to say this is too much work. It's so expensive. So we came up with a very clever idea to incentivize the distributors. So the DCs and Marvel for 50 cents. If you're buying them direct, you can pay 20 cents for them, or 60% off the cover price. Simple math.
Okay.
So ours were $1. So if they're 60% off to the stores, they were 40 cents to distributors. But we said, really, they're not gonna cut it for that. So we said, if you buy 10,000 copies of any one issue, you can get 70% off. 10% more. Retail, not wholesale, 10% of retail. For a distributor, that's a wet dream.
That's humongous.
And what we didn't quite grasp is not only was the discount very exciting for distributors, which I had forecasted one distributor buying 10,000 copies, but we had Jack Kirby. We had underestimated how important Jack was. Yeah. We knew it was important. I'd been to Jack's house a few times already, and we knew he was important, but coming back after being gone for so long, people were hungry for Jack Kirby. And so when the orders came in from the 15 distributors, we had orders for 125,000 copies.
Yeah.
When we were projecting 35,000.
Yeah, great.
And I called every distributor and said, you ordered the wrong quantity. You ordered too many. I couldn't believe the numbers. So I was actually doubting their orders. They wrote the orders to us in the mail. I said, this order can't be right.
And in those days, now wait a minute, these were direct market, non-returnable comics, right? So were these based on retailer orders, or back in those days, the distributors took more of a flyer on having an inventory position on stuff like that? Isn't that true?
Absolutely, right. And because we had the extra discount in Jack Kirby, they were going to stock our books deeper because it made financial sense to them to stock them deeper.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to say that's impossible without Kirby's association. That just the whole thing, the equation just wouldn't have worked.
It would have started off at 15, 20,000 copies, which would have been a death knell for us.
Yes.
So, and we also got extremely heavy support from the West Coast retailers who knew us as friends because we wholesaled to their stores already. We saw them at local conventions. They visited us, we visited them. So we got unusual support from the West Coast California dealers. But, we had 8 distributors who ordered 10,000 copies each, 8 different distributors, when I had forecasted 1. And we decided in the back of every one of our headline comics, we would put some new talent. We would try out new people, get some exposure, hopefully create a brand for themselves and do later books for them on their own.
And the beauty of this windfall scenario, right, in the direct market scene is like those are guaranteed orders for you, right? Before you book them for the printer, it's paid, right? So
well, think about the math here. This is interesting. So remember, the comics at Marvel 50 cents. You paid Marvel 20 cents.
Yeah.
So Marvel had to make the 20 cents, all the profit off the 20 cents. We're getting 30 cents from the big dealers and 40 cents from the small dealers. It cost 6 cents to print back then for a unit. 6 cents. So 30 cents minus 6, 24 cents per book. That's got to pay for the art, color separations, and then leftover profit. Remember, ours are twice as expensive. So all of a sudden, retailers thought, well, wait a second. For the same shelf space, I'm making twice the money. For the exact same quality of printing, I'm making twice the dough, and I got Jack Kirby. I'm going to buy more of those books. So we really got great support. We really got great support from just about everybody.
Okay, so out of the gate, Kirby. I mean, and then hi. Okay, great. You got a book for Kirby. I'm assuming they didn't all stay at that level.
No, and sales came down pretty quickly, but we had Mike Grell to follow up with Star Slayer, and that was 140,000 copies.
I think I got a Star Slayer here. No, wait, I got one here somewhere.
Right.
Here we go.
There you go. Great work. He had just come off Warlords from DC. He was red hot at the time. And having Jack sign with us made other creators like, wait a second, if Jack's doing work for those guys who's been out of the industry for so long, there must be something happening, like something almost guttural, something almost like a groundswell out of nowhere, because we weren't running ads. We were just publishing the comics and selling to distributors. We had some interesting marketing campaigns, but maybe we'll talk about those later. But we did Star Slayer to follow up Captain Victory.
Because this was after Kirby had left Marvel kind of in a disgust, and then left DC in kind of a disappointing way.
On the fourth,
Thundar the Barbarian and Turbo Teen and whatever else he was working on.
Right.
And for him to make an entree back into comics, it had to be something. There had to be something in that deal, something that was lacking in every single deal that he had ever had in his long and illustrious career. So this creator-centric contract model that you came up with is the Image Comics model of today, right?
It kind of is. Dan, can I step out the camera for about 30 seconds? My battery's for some reason going down, but I got a battery extra downstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull you off. I'll pull you off screen for a second. And whoa, Star Slayer. Hey, and while Bill is recharging the battery, let's talk for a second. Let's talk about how you can get your books reviewed here on Comic Book News with Dan Shaheen. I've got an exciting new announcement. I've got, what is it? Oh my gosh, a post office box. What? That's right. You can send your comics to Comic Book News with Dan Shaheen, P.O. Box 1163 in beautiful Arcata, California, 95518. Look, I got a nice sized post office box that will actually fit full-size comics and graphic novels. So send them. Send me your box sets. And you know what else? Send me your Kickstarter pitches. So I want to start taking the money that this channel makes, which believe me is not a lot, but I want to start putting it all back into comics. I want to start following Kickstarters, but I want to follow them from like picking the ones I like, choosing them, funding them, all the way through the process to completion, and then reviewing of the final book and determining was there value. Because if there's one thing that I've learned in supporting a variety of Kickstarters is there is a tremendous difference in the timeliness and value I'm seeing out of crowdfunding. And if more and more of them don't get their act together and get professional, they're going to kind of like might sully the whole deal. All right, Bill is back, it looks like. So I'm going to bring Bill back in.
I'm so sorry about that, Dan. For some reason, my charger in the wall is not working, but I bought a portable charger that's doing the job.
Oh, no worries. No problem.
So anyway, so we had Captain Victory, we had Star Slayer. We had reached out to Neil Adams because at that time he was super hot. Well, he's always hot, but he was super hot at that time. And we said, Neil, here's our deal. Neil's been a creator rights advocate from the early days, of course, with the landmark Siegel and Schuster support. And they looked over the contract with Chris, his daughter, and didn't find a lot of holes in there. They were pretty satisfied. They made some suggestions, which we accommodated them, but they were pretty satisfied. And we ended up doing Ms. Mystic, which may not have been Neil's greatest creation individually, but that book sold 240,000 copies.
Whoa! I didn't know that.
These are getting really big numbers.
I don't have Ms. Mystic here, but I have this is probably my all-time favorite. It's definitely my favorite Neil Adams specific book. I don't know if you can guess what I'm going to put up here, Bill.
Skate Man?
This is good. Oh, buddy, you got it. Good fun.
It's such a weird book.
Dude, tell us about Skate Man, please.
It just, when we started doing Ms. Mystic, one of the things that Neil maybe didn't quite hit his marks on is, Ms. Mystic 1 and 2 had a big gap of time between issues. And we launched with 240,000 copies. As a small publisher always needing money to expand, we wanted number 2 to ship right after it, the next month. And there was a good gap of 12, 13 months between number 1 and number 2. And we're like, dying, Neil, we need more material. What do you got? When's number 2 coming in? And they pretty much handed Escape Man done. So they had it kind of in the drawer on their side. And they said, look, if you want to publish this, we can give this as kind of not a filler, but at least you can sell some of these. And although sure. I don't remember how many we sold, it certainly was Neil Adams' artwork, which was cool. I don't think it was Neil's best work he's ever done, but it's because it's such a crazy book.
It's fantastic. The cover alone has just a place in my heart forever, Bill.
So stupid. I love it.
If this is the only comic you ever published, you're a legend, my friend. But man, you published a lot more.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you kind of a crazy story. So in our naivety about publishing comics, somewhere around, I don't know, Captain Victor 3 or 4, we were now up to 4 different issues a month, 4 different titles. And back then, the printing plants were printing 4 comics at the exact same time. So the printing plant, the printer, the press had 4 slots. Well, at that time, we only sent 3 books in. So we were going to print 40,000 pages with nothing on them, blank pages. So my print runs were uneven. So this side I had a bigger seller, and I had 2 lesser sellers, and I had 1 open slot. And the printer's like, you're printing a blank page. And I said, well, what are you talking about? I sent you 3 books, just print them. And they're like, no, but we print 4 up. I'm like, holy crap, what do I do now? I'm not paying 6 cents to print nothing. So I called up Scott Shaw, who's a tremendous funny animal artist.
Yeah,
and a great. He's done Captain Carrot and all kinds of great Flintstones and just tremendous artist. Scott, we need a comic book community. Well, that's great. I love to do a color comic. Hadn't really done one before. He's an underground artist back then. I said, great, Scott. I need the book, and I need it kind of like next week. That's pretty funny. What do you mean? I need the whole book done next week. Well, what part? So what part? He said, well, I need the script, the pencils, the inks, the colors, the lettering, the editing next week, like 9 days from now. It's like, well, that's not. Yeah, how do you do that? Because a bunch of artists have me draw 3 pages. I don't think there's even a contract for it. I think we just said, Scott, draw something. Like, I need it now, fast. And so we ended up printing 40,000 wild animals number 1s. There's only 1 issue. That filled that 1 gap on the printing plan. We shipped them to all of our distributors unannounced. And we said, in proportion to other titles, sell as many as you can, and then tell me how you sold and pay us.
Wow.
Because to us, they were free because I had to pay 6 cents for blank pages.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
And so it's a totally wacky scenario. And
how did it end up selling?
It was moderate. It was not at that time. It was one of our lesser sellers, but it was a miracle it ever came out.
Okay. And then so you said, all right, I found somebody who could do a book in 9 days. So let me I need somebody faster. Who is possibly faster in the world as a cartoonist, right?
Only the one and only Sergio.
Tell us how it grew. Mark Evanier, Sergio Aragones. How did this happen?
Well, that book was, Sergio had created Gru a little earlier than we were aware of. And he was kind of shopping around a little bit. So he had talked to Gene and Jan Mulaney over at Eclipse, which is a later version for that, what they published. Talked to us and a few others. And I think our creator-friendly deal kind of won him over. Sergio's a friend of Jack's. So there's a kind of a natural, if Jack's going to go that way. I mean, Jack brought a lot to the table. Not just his... Of
course, the Evanier Kirby connection, of course, right?
Yes, yes. And we knew Sergio from his days at Comic-Con, so we were on the committee. He'd done a store signing list before Gru in the stores. And so he brought the title to us, which was fantastic. He's, I think he's one of the world's greatest cartoonists in any medium.
No doubt about it. Working hard to try and get him on this show soon.
Grossly underappreciated, but the guy's a master craftsman.
Yeah.
His sight gags are incredible. Gru is just hilarious. It's just a fun book.
Just underrated as just in artistic ability, not just in funny cartoon. Like that's almost like the stuff that he dashes off and it looks so effortless is just decades and decades of the best cartooning imaginable.
Absolutely. And then we had our last really, I'd say, significant breakthrough. Well, as we're doing the main front issues, we had these 4 to 6 page backup stories.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when we discovered the amazing Dave Stevens. With
who? I never heard of that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, of course. Dave Stevens. I got a million Dave Stevens pictures here, or not a million. I got a few. Let's talk. Tell me about Dave Stevens.
So Dave was in the back of, I believe, a Star Slayer. Had a big print run, so we could introduce Dave's books to a lot of people all at once. When Dave said, "I'd love to do work for you," he was working in a studio at that time with, I think, Bill Stout and Richard Hessecox and 2 other guys in LA, kind of sharing studio space, as many artists do at times. I think it was those 4 guys.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, and Paul Chadwick, maybe.
Maybe. So anyway, so I said, I got this character. He says, we pay all our artists the same rate. So Dave Steele was getting paid the exact same money Jack Kirby was paying, which is unheard of for.
Could you tell us what that rate is? It's been whatever 40 years.
Sure.
What do they get paid?
Basically, the penciler would get about $75 a page. Ink would get about $125. Colors would get about $25 to $40 a page. Letters about $20 a page. Editors changed all over the place based on who the editor was. So it was about $275, $300 per page times 20, 30 pages, which was.
And how did that compare to, say, to a Marvel DC rate at the time?
Very competitive, except we pay royalties from copy number 1, and they paid no royalties. So basically, the page rate was an advance against royalties.
I see. So very close on the page rate, not much more on the page rate, but they got back end, which Marvel and DC were not even thinking about.
So a book like Ms. Mystic, Neil might have ended up being paid $1,000 a page with all the royalties built in. Big money.
Awesome.
When he might have made on the same book, $8,000.
Okay, so this how does Dave Stevens get on your radar? How do you become the first guy to publish Dave Stevens comics, or were you the first guy to publish?
Well, he'd done some spot illustrations, some small press items, some undergrounds, a few other items.
But not comics.
Well, yes, but they're kind of hard to find little print runs. They're out there, not well known.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of them.
And the hardcore Stevens fans know of a few of them. They're not a lot out there. I don't remember exactly how it came to our door, but I can tell you that the first day, once we did the deal, on the first day the pages started to show up, and Dave warned us that he was painfully slow. Not that he didn't want to draw faster, but he wanted to be acutely accurate on the plane designs. So he was going to libraries and checking out books to make sure the planes were exactly to specs. The outfits were designed for the periods they were. They weren't made up. These were carefully crafted. And so every time a page would come in, literally our publishing office would just grind to a halt. And it'd be like the sound effect, the little angel sound would come in, and we just stare at the page like, it's so beautiful. I mean, it was so clean, so tight, so sensual, so sexy, so wonderful. And you stared like, oh man, how can people not love this material? How can they just not fall in love with it?
So now, were those originals then black and white repro, just like regular comics with separate color separations, or
yes. Yeah. And we actually used on Captain Victory #1, we used the same color separation houses that Marvel and DC used, called Chemical Color, which was in Connecticut back then. And was really ironic is the colorists that were doing the color separations were all a bunch of, back then, because we were kids, old ladies.
Yes, and they would do all the cutting out of the.
It was ridiculously manual, and these ladies had no interest in comics at all. It was just a day job. They had to punch the clock to do this work for Marvel and DC, and we said, "Well, do Captain Victory for us too." And we realized that the newsprint would really get very muddy on the coloring, and it would, what's called bleeding.
Yes.
So you get bleed from the front to the back, so the images don't become very crisp. So we said, well, can we do better? And we designed this thing called gray lines, which I believe were the first or second to use them, which really took the color separations away from those old ladies and brought them into more modern day colorists, which required more overlays, acetates and stuff, and really made the colors pop. And of course, to make the colors pop, you got to use better paper. So what happened was better separations and better paper meant the ink sat on top of the paper. It didn't go into the paper. So then you got brilliant coloring.
And now, how much extra did that add to the unit cost of the comics? Was it significant to do that?
It was a lot. Our separation costs probably went from maybe $1,500 a book to $3,000 a book, so almost double.
But man, so worth it, because those comics looked a lot better than anything that came out for decades from the big two.
They were really sharp. And then the last big breakthrough for us on the publishing side, which was an incredible partnership for a couple of years, was meeting up with April Campbell and Bruce Jones. Bruce was famous for, he's a tremendous talent as far as a writer and an artist. April also was a writer and editor.
I didn't know Jones was an artist too. I guess I didn't even realize that.
A lot of his artwork looks like Jeffrey Catherine Jones, but not related.
Got it.
Similar, in some areas, similar styles. Did some stuff for Warren and a few other companies. Very talented guy. Both of them are good writers. And we formed a partnership with them where they would package books for us. We would sit down and say, okay, this book, we have this amount of money per issue. I'm making these numbers up. We got $10,000 per issue. If you can deliver this book for that amount of money, we'll give you $10,000. And because of this is really interesting, and very people know this, and this is probably might be considered insensitive to the creators, but it was scientifically very accurate. So we had stores. I created cycle sheets for our sell-through. So I want to know, for stores, it's hard to keep track of inventory. So I had a very laborious, we had to count every book twice a week. First weekend sales, and then by the next Wednesday before the next issue came out. And I kept years of data. And the data was sorted by not just title, but artist. All on paper, because there's no computers back then.
Yeah.
So I could then, when I'm ordering new Marvel comics, I could say, gee, it's drawn by this artist.
Wow.
And I always sell 45 copies no matter what he draws.
Yes, yes.
That was my starting order.
Yeah.
And then if you had a special character like Spider-Man was in it, I might buy a few more. So I told Bruce and April, well, we have a grading system on how to do creative books. We ranked all the creators, every creator we could think of, into charts. And I said, here's all the A creators. A creators means you can sell 75,000 copies every time. The B creators were 60,000 or 50,000 and so on. Same thing with letterers and same thing with colorists. And so we said, you have a point value on this book of this point value. So you have to score on our point value and this budget. And mathematically, it worked almost every single time perfectly.
Wow.
But if you're a creator and you're now being broken down to a statistical number, it's not a very sensitive. It's not a very sensitive thing to do.
Very objective in a subjective artist's world.
It was very analytical to try to do a sales analysis.
Ooh, and I love it, Bill. I wrote software to do the same kind of thing in my store basis. You know what I mean? And it's like, it just goes to show that whether it's publishing or retailing or whatever, to make it in the comics industry, you have to have a love and appreciation for the quality work and the creators.
That's right. Or
you have nothing.
Right. And so we had this table of different values for the creators, this point system.
Yes.
And then we said, well, if you're going to hire the big guns, Bernie Wrightson and Barry Windsor Smith, you're going to pay them a little more money. You got to have some material in the back that's maybe not quite as rich. Kind of the filler in the back of the book for some maybe brand new guys or
sure, okay.
Because they were packagers, which is different than the books we built from ground one. So they could create their own rules. We just gave them a budget to work under.
Yeah.
And a scoring table.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. I see where you're going.
They could pay the bigger names more money.
And
then the brand new guys a little bit less.
But they get a little more exposure because they're in a better selling book and people are going to see their stuff.
Exactly right.
And that's how you get a Dave Stevens backup story in what? What was the first backup story you said?
Star Slayer, but he did a lot of work with Twisted Tales and Alien Worlds.
Yeah,
You
the
can see,
covers
right,
for those
right,
books, fantastic. I'll show them
right.
again. I showed them a lot already, but man, you can't look at these too much.
Well, the Alien Worlds and Twisted Tales and Pathways of Fantasies, these were really artistically packaged books, stellar books.
Yeah.
These featured a lot of the guys that Bruce grew up with, which was Bernie Wrightson and Barry Windsor Smith. These are his fellow artists.
Has this stuff
Richard,
been collected?
a couple of them, not all of them, though. It's really terrible. He got Richard Corbin, who lives down the street from him in Kansas City.
Because you
these are
don't
guys who
own
gave
any
him Perkin.
reprint rights
That's
to
right.
them, right? It all reverts back to the creators, as it should, right? As it should.
In my book, yes. So it was very interesting, and we went from the one book, the black and white book in '79, to Jack Kirby in early '81, and within a year or two, we had about 10 or 12 titles coming out all at the same time, and things were going pretty well, and it was really a wild hayride. With we finally started figuring out a little bit of the business techniques by then. We were now no longer teenagers, and we got some mojo going. Our publishing was going very well. We were doing so well there that the artists were saying, well, we're getting more artists asking to do books for us, more than we can actually handle. And they're saying, well, I want to leave Marvel DC, I'll do a book for you guys, but can you give me an advance before the book ships so I can pay my bills while I'm waiting for the Marvel money to come in? I said, it doesn't seem unreasonable to us. So we give artist number X $5,000, this artist number Y $8,000, artist number Z $2,000. And then, in a year, we had like $350,000 advanced with no books coming in yet.
Yes.
And what we learned is that you have the consummate professionals like Jack Kirby and Sergio and Bruce and April.
Yes.
And then you have a whole lot of guys that are not quite that.
And then you got everybody else, right? I mean, frankly.
Well, yeah, a lot of them. So what was happening is they took our advance money and then took other jobs.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they? They already cashed the check, Bill. Right, why wouldn't they?
So our job became second fiddle.
Yeah.
Even though we advanced money, I mean, I don't have ill feelings towards anybody. Just the way it worked out, and that was our naivety.
Right, and then to get that back, you got to sue somebody or whatever. We
weren't litigious. That wasn't our thing.
Yeah. And nobody wins with the lawyers in that scenario anyway, right? So
it doesn't. So what happened is that towards in 1984, we had a lot of pressure for too much receivables from retailers, too much advances from creators. Some of our books in the book market had big returns, so the sales weren't quite what we thought. And it all kind of came into us at one time, the financial pressures. And so we sold a couple of our stores to fellow retailers in San Diego. We sold our distribution company to Bud Plant up in Northern California, one of the founders of the comic book industry for the direct market.
Yeah. And who, by the way, Bud, I got to get in here. See, he's on my list of dream interviews for sure.
He's an important character for sure.
And he's a great guy too.
We sold our Steelville operation to Capital City, which ended up being their major hub.
Yeah.
And then I took about 6 months off to digest what just happened. I was at the elderly age of 26.
Yeah.
Felt like 94. Had not taken a single day off except for my honeymoon. In that 14-year run of Pacific Comics, I worked 7 days a week besides going to school, and just needed 6 months of. My routine was, I drove my bicycle to the beach, went surfing for 2 hours, played basketball for 2 hours, and then went to the park for 2 hours. Did that for 6 months straight, just to digest what was happening.
That's not a bad life. That sounds okay to me.
Didn't have a lot of money, but I had enough money to last 6 months.
Who needs it when that's your life? That seems like a pretty good life to me.
And then I said, at 26, I probably should get a job again. I guess I should try to earn a living to pay for my wife and hopefully kids down the pipeline. And kind of a funny story is I said, well, gee, I sold my business to Bud Plant. Maybe they'll hire me back as an executive. So I called up Bud, the purchaser of my business. I said, Bud, what are you thinking? He made me a nice offer. But, Bud is a genuine guy, one of my good friends, long-standing friends, almost 50 years. But his idea of executive pay was a little bit different than my idea of executive pay.
Sure, of course.
So he was offering less than livable wages for a very high level position. I tried to explain that, but I just can't bring a family up on that wage. And he said, can't do it. we couldn't make a deal. So then I realized that there was 3 other big companies out there. There was Diamond Comics, who had just recently started up a couple years earlier, Capital City, who was a little bit more slick, out of Madison, Wisconsin, and Glenwood out of St. Louis. Those are 3 big boys. And Glenn was owned by a guy named Russ Ernst, kind of a tough guy. Okay. Capital City was by Milton Greep and John Davis, 2 tall guys. I'm short and pudgy. And then Diamond was owned by Steve Jeppy. And so I arranged for interviews with each of them, and I realized Russ was going to make a fit. So I decided halfway through the interview, I said, Russ, I'm not getting a vibe here. Let's not waste each other's time. Let's just end the interview. And then I called up Capital City. I said, I'm looking for work. And they said, well, gee, you've already done a lot of things. You're only 26. We might want to hire you. Let's do an interview. We did a phone interview with John and Milton and myself. And they had a lot of questions for me, which made sense. They're interviewing me for a position as one of their right-hand guys. And I had an equal amount of questions for them. And my basic question to them was, I think of Capital City as a huge wedding cake. I use a lot of analogies, by the way, Dan. I use analogies for everything.
Okay.
So I see Capital City as a huge wedding cake with 5 tiers. And it's the beautiful white icing with the beautiful border lines and the red roses and the man and woman on top. And the cake is picture perfect. And you cut into it, you take the slice out, you take a bite, but sometimes it doesn't taste quite right.
Mm.
I said, you guys are super good marketers. I'm a marketer. I'm not sure I can do any better than what you're doing right now. You guys need an accountant. I don't do accounting. I'm going to be a bad fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to embellish your marketing and your sales, I can do that. And they made me a very
or
nice
what
offer.
They already had, not more what they needed.
Right. And they made me a very nice offer. And I ended up turning it down because the money was good, but it was in Madison, Wisconsin, and they have.
I was about to say you gotta move to Wisconsin.
I mean, now Madison, Wisconsin is a beautiful city, a college town, but it gets really cold. And I'm from California.
It's getting a little hot these days.
Yes, that's true. So I had the same interview process with Steve Jeppy, and Steve had questions for me and questions for Steve, and I said, Steve, you got this beautiful wedding cake, 5 tiers, and your cake has no icing. There's no roses. There's no fondue. There's no man and woman on top. But you take a slice of the cake, you take a bite, it tastes pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Said, Steve, if you do 2 things for me, I can ice your cake, and we can become dominant very quickly. One is you got to pay all your bills on time. You can't pay late. Because if you pay your bills on time, I never have to bring out a baseball club on anybody.
Right.
It's implied. You pay your bills on time. Never mention it. Best position ever. Second is you can't make any editorial decisions of what we carry in the catalog. You don't get to decide what's in your own catalog.
Who gets to make that decision?
Only me.
Only you.
An unhired employee. Because most people don't know this until this very day. At the time, Steve was married into the Hare Krishners.
I didn't know that.
I'm saying not because there's Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that either.
Right. So he was not carrying. He was only carrying Marvel, DC, Archie, and Harvey, and Starlog. That was the entire product range.
Oh.
No independent comics, no undergrounds, because very controversial for his
because of Comics Code.
His
nothing
beliefs.
not carried by the Comics Code.
His beliefs.
Yeah. Okay.
I respected that. So I said during the interview, I said, Steve, we can continue this, and you can become the best independent local distributor there is, and we'll dominate locally. But if you want to be worldwide or nationwide, you can't make your own decisions on the products in your own catalog. And this was a long discussion point. He's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you don't get to say what we carry, and we're going to carry things that you don't like. It's like, well, I don't like that. So I understand that. You can't be big without the decision being made. And we decided to make a deal. Fine. He offered me less than Capital offered, but it was not quite as northern as Capital was.
Right,
Because the wedding cake was blank, I had unequaled access to everything. Because quite honestly, anything I did would be an improvement. Anything.
Right.
Because the pinning palette was blank white paper.
Well, and so, I mean, one of the things I think of you as is the one of the papas of previews, for
Right.
good or for ill.
Well,
So
I created previews. But
yeah, so why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, the preview is actually interesting because when I was at Pacific Comics, we created a catalog like previews, except 15 years earlier.
Yes.
When I sold my company to Bud Plant, he took over that catalog. When we bought Bud Plant was at Diamond, I brought the previous catalog back to Diamond. So it was a hybrid of my catalog that went to Bud that went back to Diamond. So what happened was we'd hired Bud Plant, we'd bought Bud Plant's business out in Grass Valley, California. And we brought his catalog department from Grass Valley over to Maryland. We brought the 3 catalog people, the editor, the writer, and the artist, the graphic designer. And the first month we went from a handwritten 2-page order form. Next month we had a black and white illustrated catalog. And our accounts went crazy. Like, you're showing pictures. We can actually see what we're buying. Because back then you couldn't see anything.
Sure.
It was a blind offer.
That was nice. It was nice.
Nice upgrade.
It went a little far, Bill. They took that to an extreme.
We went from that 16-page catalog to maybe 600 pages over the course of a decade or two. And
at any point, did you go like, it's too much? It's a strain. It's not as much I don't know. Does it want to be a catalog for retailers or a consumer tool? It became more and more difficult, in my opinion, over the years to navigate previews. I used to enjoy the reading process of looking through previews when there was more consistency in the listings.
Yes.
When they gave over, when you just started renting out full pages and full sections to publishers, I feel like it lost a lot of its unifying features that brought some kind of like cohesiveness.
And it probably lost, what I would say is it probably lost some of its integrity.
Maybe.
Because it became more of a pay-per-view operation versus a distributor choice operation.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And what really was really kind of complicated was, so in 1983, 90, when did Marvel buy Heroes World?
93, I think.
So when Marvel decided to break off on their own, and they bought the 3rd largest distributor at the time, there was Diamond, Capital City, and Heroes World. And Ivan and Irene Snyder, the owners of Heroes World, really did a good job of selling Marvel at that time, that they could go from 400 accounts to 4,000 accounts with 1 month's notice. And
they sold them a load of something for sure.
And Marvel paid, it was public record, Marvel paid them $26 million to buy their company to seamlessly take over this business. And they went from 400 accounts to 4,000 accounts plus in 1 week with notification. And the telephone time went from 5 minutes to 12 hours. If you want to get a Heroes World employee on the phone, you got to wait a day on hold to call in a damage or to place an order. You just couldn't get through.
I remember, I was working in a shop when that happened. I was working in Hijinks Comics, San Jose, or it was Mike's Coliseum at that point. I was a senior in high school probably when that happened. And it was just a shock, a chaotic shock to the world that really hurt comics a lot.
Right.
Very similar to some stuff that we're seeing happening right now on the other side.
A little hyperleap forward, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't want to gloss over too many things, but I want to touch on that for a second. Do you think DC really did not learn their lesson that they should have learned from 1993 in Heroes World?
Well, it's probably a different management in place. Let me jump back for a second. In 95, Heroes World got in trouble. DC decided they wanted to be on their own. And there was a distributor wars going on, very vicious time frame behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And for whatever reason, DC decides to go with Diamond as their exclusive partner. And Dark Horse decides to go with Diamond, Image goes with Diamond, and Valiant goes with Diamond. And Kitchen Sink ends up with Viz, and Capital City ends up with Viz and Kitchen Sink. which are pretty small compared to the other guys.
Yeah, that ain't gonna float a distributor.
Not of their size. And so that we had lost at that time when Marvel left $50 million in annual volume of sales. And when DC went direct and Image went exclusive with us, we picked up the volume plus some. So actually, we lost Marvel, and we're bigger without Marvel.
I mean, did you squash your discounts in order to lure those guys into exclusive contract? What did you have to give up to get those other players?
I can't discuss the specific terms. What I can say is we were very publisher user friendly, and our competitor, Capital City, played a little bit more hardball.
Yeah.
So I think I like Milton and John very much, but I think they felt they had the power, and we felt as soon as Marvel bought Heroes World, the distributor power left our wings, and we were done. Publishers controlled. So Paul Levitz and Bob Wayne were in charge.
I see. Yeah, that's been stated that like DC really, or Diamond really had to give up a lot of power to DC, and that's something that Milton was probably just not willing to do ultimately.
Well, here's a great story. You know, publishers used to bid for our previous covers before the exclusive wars.
Yeah, right.
And you'd have publisher X say, "I've got a Frank Miller cover. Let me send it to you." And they sent it to me. I go, "It looked terrible." I said, "I don't like it. I haven't read." I felt bad, but I said, I'm not using my cover. It's terrible. Have them redraw it. It doesn't look good. And at that time, I'm selling 140,000 copies of previews. It's a big seller. Diamond's making money on the catalog business.
Yeah,
it's craziness.
Yeah.
And so
I feel like there's a conflict of interest there somehow that maybe didn't ultimately serve the market well.
It might be. So when DC went with us and then the other publishers and things shook out, jumping now, you got totally different players in place at DC. And while I don't think DC leaving Diamond is good or bad, I don't really have an opinion. I think the way it was handled was poor. And there's obviously something behind the curtain that happened there that soured that 25-year DC Marvel relationship, DC Diamond relationship.
Yeah.
Something soured the milk there that used to be golden. And wasn't anymore.
I got theories, man. I would love to be a fly on the wall on those meetings that was going on, and it just happened in such a quick time frame, though. It just there's definitely a lot unspoken about what's going on behind the scenes there.
I think so. My gut is that there was long-term discussions, and then something happened in a relatively short time period that triggered okay, I can't take it anymore. I'm done. But that me speculating. I'm not privy to it anymore. Although I would have enjoyed being part of this conversation because normally that was one of my jobs at Diamond is the major contract negotiations.
Well, I feel like when we lost, when they lost Levitz and Bob Wayne and a whole, like there was that generation there at DC that was so tuned in to retailers and came from retailing, understood retailers, actually talked and respected retailers. And when they left, I don't know. I didn't see it as much from those that came in their wake. Really,
I think that's accurate. And I think I've always said, those last couple of months anyway, I've always felt that, to their credit, Paul Levitz and Bob Wayne, with COVID popping up, I felt like they would have been better wartime consiglieres,
big time,
than the current DC executives. Who I like all those guys. They're just not as savvy to some of the details of history.
Oh man, I think I said this before. They're not Tom Hagen's. They're not even. I don't know. They're not even Fredo's from some of those decisions. So, wow, Bill, that brings us kind of all the way right from a really. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Your business stuff and the stuff at Diamond really interesting and everything else. But man, your publishing legacy. The stuff that you brought to light, the people that you published for the first time, your respect for creator rights, and really your understanding that it is that drives the sales of the books even more than, say, the characters or the properties per se.
Right. Well, I think that's right. We were very good marketers. So when we got our mojo going in the comics, we had Free Comic Day. 25 years before Free Comic Day was a thing, we had at the San Diego Padres baseball games, we gave away comics.
At
the indoor soccer team, we had 4 comic days a year. Around San Diego County, we rented 28 bus benches and had signs on the buses advertising our stores. So in 1976, during the Bicentennial, we had a Scott Shaw illustration with Mr. Terrific Pacific, which is our store logo character, riding a bison, calling it Bicentennial Celebrations. And that ran on bus benches all over Center County. It was a total gas.
Pretty awesome, Bill. You did some cool things, man. You pioneered in that way. You really pioneered in publishing and distribution, and I love that story of little Billy picking up 1,000 comics for $50. That is
well, my brother, we were partners for the whole time.
Right. And is he still involved in comics in any way these days?
He's involved. He's somewhat retired. When Pacific Comics closed up shop, he opened up a very nice small niche publishing company called Blackthorn Comics.
Oh yeah, of course.
They did a lot of what I would call right at the black and white explosion side. Yeah. They did radioactive turtle, radioactive mice and mice vice and all those.
Adolescent radioactive black belt hamsters.
That's right. No, not that one. They did. There's like 4 versions of
yeah.
He did a couple of those books, and he was doing 10 books a month for a while.
I can't even recall any of those titles, but that publishing name is. He
did California Raisins.
Oh, the 3D.
Sold them to Spencer's Gifts, like through the bushels.
Oh, I'll bet that was a good looking book too.
Yeah, he did a lot of those kind of promotional books that did very well. And now he's kind of been he does a little eBay selling of animation cells and some rarities, but he's kind of retired now. So he's
okay.
He was in that business and also the remainder business for a while, more behind the scenes, out of the spotlight, so to speak.
Oh, great. That's really interesting to me. Actually, I'd love to learn about the remainder business. That's one that's really interesting to me too.
If you want to know about, let me know. I'm very well versed.
I'm going to take you up on that, Bill. For sure I am. Man, and I hope that you'll come back again. This is your second appearance on the show, and you're a home run as a guest. I'm going to say it, Bill.
Well, I talk too much. That's okay.
It's so easy, man. I could sit back and I'm actually listening to your stories. It's so fantastic. Well, I don't see it. There's some comments. I'm going to really quick put up just a few of the comments that came up.
Sure.
Mission Comics, Leaf from Mission Comics and Art. Thanks for unmuting. You're welcome, Leaf. We love you too. Good luck. Leaf is a member. He's a supporter. He clicked that little join button down there, folks. If you're watching YouTube, you can click join. You can give me money every month. Every month, your choice of how much, and I'll take that money and I'll spend it on comics.
Nice.
How can it make? Oh, this is from way back when we were talking about Give Comics Hope. How can it make a difference if Marvel and DC don't care? What can small individual stores do to help?
Well, all the comic stores are small individual stores. There's a few mega stores, of course, in Manhattan, in LA, and a few other places. But really, I think the stores have to be more creative these days. They got to really work outside their normal comfort boxes. They've got to do everything really, really well. They got to engage social media. If they don't do internet sales, they have to do internet sales. They got to really break out of their comfort zone and try things to ingratiate themselves with the customer base. Be super interactive. Don't be afraid to call them at home. Say new books are in. You got
to take a page out of the Jesse James playbook and get out there and work every angle. That guy stopped selling new comics from Diamond years ago, and everybody thought he would be dead and gone. And now he's selling more comics than ever.
He's got an 8,000 square foot store with no new comics in it.
That blows my mind. I can't wait to go see it. I'm gonna go see it.
What's kind of a weird thing there is with new comics basically averaging almost $4 each. Back issues are really good value.
Absolutely.
The $1 $2 bins are gold mines now.
Bingo. You're so right, man. As the price of the new comic goes up, the value of the back issue is only increasing even for the lower dollar amounts. And especially if you consider back issues used to have a lot more bang for the buck in reading value, before the decompressed era of comics.
Well, you think about Mile High Comics or My Comic Shop in Texas.
Yeah.
These are back issue specialists. And I bet you they're doing gangbusters business right now with the back issue comics.
Well, if you just look at the new book business, half of the book, there's a model for selling new books, but not many people are making good money. It's used books and used media and stuff. You can control your margins so much better.
Use video games from GameStop.
Oh, it's huge. Well,
Right.
that'll go away now as it's all internet based. So it's like all we got left is paper, man. That's all we got to cling to.
That's true.
What do we got here? Okay, I'm just going to real quickly. How did you advertise this? This was talking about your catalog. Like, how did you sell that catalog for $1? Like, do you have a catalog with your catalog in it? How did that work? It was just mail order?
Well, it was mail order, but we had there was a few fanzines out back then. Comic Buyer's Guide, which is the weekly newspaper that came out that had all the kind of the listings inside. We ran ads in those. We ran ads inside Marvel Comics to sell our catalog. We were one of the first.
So really direct. It was direct to consumer. And to sell a catalog too. It's was that common practice in those days, or was it usually like send for a free catalog or just like a nominal fee?
Yeah, usually send like a quarter or postage handling only,
or a stamped envelope or something. Or
right. But we felt like with the original artwork, not just the Frazetta cover, but inside we had probably 30 different illustrations commissioned for us. We were giving them more value. They pay a little money for it.
Great. Okay. Well, that's all we've got for some comments. We got some waves. Hello from Vancouver. Hey, Alan.
Fantastic city.
Yeah, I want to go there. My wife just said we should move there. I said it's also one of the most expensive places in the world.
Brutal, especially Vancouver Island is really tough.
Ridiculous.
But the photograph you used, which you got a note from Ken Steacy on, that's when I was visiting up in Vancouver.
Let me pull that one up one more time. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, that's when Ken shuffled me around for a good day in his car, showed me the sights. And we were on top of a little hill overlooking the city there.
Great thumbnail material, right down to the big blank spot on the bottom for your name. Fantastic.
Well, it's the old Captain Morgan pose, right?
Oh yeah, huh? That's right. Okay, well, Bill, thank you for coming. I'm going to invite you back again. We're going to have panels and discussions. I hope you will come back because, man,
sure.
Fascinating discussion.
Fantastic.
Stick around if you want. I got to play closing credits and wrap this thing up, but we can talk if you want. But I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thanks
so much,
again. GiveComicsHope.org, right? GiveComicsHope. Okay. Thanks,
Fantastic.
Bill. Hey, guys, that was Bill Schanes. Okay. Not many people, I don't know, not everybody gets off on talk about like the intricacies of comic book distribution, but man, it just tickles me pink. It just hits me right in my good spot, whatever that is. I don't know why. I love it. You know what else I love? I love you people watching. We still got 16 eyeballs watching right now. That's not bad, especially considering we had to compete with two even older dudes talking even stupider stuff to each other all evening long. I don't know if any of you guys watched that stuff, but I could not. That was the most cringeworthy political debate I have ever witnessed in my life, right down to like when I ran for school president in the 8th grade. Like that was gnarly. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Stick around. We got some next week. It might not be Tuesday, but it's coming up soon. We got a long-awaited interview. We've talked about this guy before. Yeah, I'm finally going to do it. I'm waiting for some Frog comics to be shipped to me. I'm going to bring in EVS, and we're going to talk. We're going to talk about comics. We're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about, what's good and bad in comics culture, what I like and what I don't like about what I see coming out of his camp. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be fun. I hope that you'll come and stick around. Okay, guys, I got to roll the closing credits and I got to skedaddle. We've got a closing cameo at the end of these credits. And here's my challenge to you. In the cameo, there's a two-headed dude, and he's going to say some stuff. And I have rewound it 100 times, and I cannot understand exactly what he says. So if you can say it, the first one to put it in the comments will get. What'll they get? They're going to get a genuine no prize. I've got one right here. It doesn't have your name on it, but you'll get it if you can tell me what these guys are saying. We'll see you. When are we going to see you? I don't know exactly when, but I know it will be next time.
pie smack our face. How do you like about that? You hold that pia pie in this hand. Bicarbonate, if I had that mug in this hand, I make from him special dish of chop fricassees. I don't like chop pia pie fricassees. I make for you to like it.
Oh, why you two-headed face for I'll fix you. Oh, how do you like that? Come on, you're gonna take a double header this time. Wham! Well, I guess I fixed those two fellas. I won't hear from them anymore. Oh, yeah? Oh. Who's gonna make who like chicken fricassee?